Sometimes the loneliness you feel is not loneliness at all. It is protection. When Allah removes certain people from your life or distances you from certain gatherings, He is not punishing you. He is purifying your surroundings. There are moments when your soul needs quiet to hear the whispers of guidance from Allah. The peace you feel when you step away from noise is not emptiness, it is divine safety. You are being shielded from the chaos that could disturb your spiritual growth. When your heart begins to ache for calmness instead of constant company, that is not a sign of antisocial behavior. It is a sign that Allah is placing you under His special care. He knows what your heart can handle. He knows that not every voice deserves to be heard in your presence, not every gathering deserves your time, and not every relationship will nurture your faith. Sometimes Allah closes doors to protect your peace, even before you realize what lies behind them. There are people whose presence drains your energy, whose words weaken your faith, and whose lifestyles distract you from your purpose. Allah sees what you cannot see. When He allows you to drift away from such company, it is an act of mercy, not loss. It is His way of preserving the purity of your heart and the focus of your soul. When you suddenly find comfort in being alone with your thoughts, in reflection, and in remembrance of Allah, that is a divine signal that your spirit is being realigned with what truly matters. Many times, peace doesn't come from adding more people or activities to your life. It comes from removing what no longer serves your spiritual well-being. It is in those moments of quiet that you begin to rediscover yourself, your faith, and your purpose. You realize that you do not need to fill every silence with conversation, nor every weekend with plans. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is to sit in peace, breathe deeply, and allow your heart to rest in the remembrance of Allah. The Prophet _faith himself spent time alone before revelation came. His seclusion in the cave of Hira was not isolation, it was preparation. Allah was training him in the silence, building his strength and purifying his heart to carry the weight of a great message. Likewise, when Allah draws you into solitude, it may be because He is preparing you for something beyond your imagination. The quiet is where transformation begins, where you shed distractions and grow closer to your Creator. When you are separated from the crowd, your heart becomes more sensitive to truth. You begin to recognize the false comforts that once kept you busy. You start valuing peace more than noise, truth more than attention, and connection with Allah more than connection with people. This shift might confuse those around you, but it is a gift. Not everyone is meant to understand the peace that comes from divine alignment. Sometimes the people you distance yourself from will question your change. They may call you distant, quiet, or even antisocial. But you must remember that you are not obligated to explain every step of your spiritual journey. The one who guides your heart understands you completely. Your peace does not need validation from anyone, it only needs preservation. You owe it to your soul to guard it from anything that threatens its tranquility. Peace is fragile, and not every environment is gentle enough to protect it. That is why Allah removes you from certain circles or habits that once felt comfortable. What once entertained you might now feel heavy. What once kept you busy might now seem meaningless. These shifts are signs of growth, signs that Allah is detaching you from the temporary so you can focus on the eternal. When your heart no longer finds joy in superficial things, it's because it's being prepared for higher forms of joy, peace, purpose, and nearness to Allah. The world glorifies constant socializing and noise, but a believer learns that peace is often hidden in stillness. It's not about rejecting people, it's about protecting your soul. It's about finding strength in quiet prayer, clarity in reflection, and contentment in solitude. When Allah blesses you with the understanding that you don't need to be everywhere or please everyone, He's freeing you from a silent prison. That realization itself is a mercy. So, when you sit alone and wonder why life feels quieter than before, remember that Allah may be protecting you from unseen harm. The withdrawal you feel is not weakness, it's wisdom. The silence around you is not emptiness, it's divine presence. You are not being cut off from the world. You are being connected to something greater, something purer, peace that comes only from Allah. When your heart begins to crave silence instead of noise, and solitude instead of crowds, that is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a sign that Allah is nurturing your spiritual growth. There comes a time in life when the soul outgrows its old attachments. The things that once entertained you start to lose their sparkle, and the conversations that once thrilled you begin to feel shallow. This transformation can be confusing, but it is actually a sign that your heart is maturing in faith. It is no longer satisfied with surface-level happiness. It yearns for something deeper, something lasting, something real. As your connection with Allah strengthens, you begin to value your time differently. You start to recognize how precious every moment is, and how easily it can be wasted in meaningless talk or company that adds no value to your soul. This awareness makes you more selective about where you go, who you speak with, and what you allow into your heart. You realize that your energy is not infinite, and your peace is sacred. Protecting it becomes a form of worship, because Allah has entrusted you with your heart, and caring for it is part of your responsibility as a believer. Sometimes when Allah elevates your soul, He allows you to drift away from certain people without conflict or explanation. You might not even understand it yourself. You'll just feel a quiet pull to step back, to detach, to spend more time in reflection. That's not rejection, it's protection. Allah is rearranging your surroundings so you can focus more on Him. It's a purification process, the gentle separation from what no longer serves your spiritual purpose. You may feel alone at times, but in reality, you are being guided closer to divine companionship. This new phase of selectiveness doesn't mean you look down on others or consider yourself superior. Rather, it means you have recognized that peace has a price, and that price is discernment. You begin to notice how easily certain conversations can steal your tranquility, how quickly gossip can poison your heart, and how exhausting it is to keep company that does not remind you of Allah. So you choose quietness, prayer, and reflection instead. This choice may seem small to others, but it is monumental for your soul. It's natural for people to misunderstand your distance. They might think you've changed, that you've become antisocial, or that you're avoiding them. But what they don't see is the inner journey taking place within you. They don't realize that your silence isn't coldness, it's clarity. You're no longer drawn to things that distract you from your purpose. You're seeking depth instead of drama, sincerity instead of superficiality. Your priorities have shifted not out of pride but out of peace. When your heart becomes selective, your entire life begins to realign. You spend more time in prayer, more time reading the Quran, more time reflecting on who you are and where you're heading. You start noticing Allah's signs in the small details, in the calmness after prayer, in the comfort of stillness, in the feeling of contentment that can't be explained. You realize that you no longer need to chase happiness in the company of others. You can find it right where you are, in your connection with Allah. This selectiveness is not a loss of social ability. It's the birth of spiritual sensitivity. You begin to sense when a space isn't good for your soul. You feel when a conversation lowers your heart's light. You recognize when an environment doesn't bring out the best in you. This awareness is a gift, a spiritual compass that Allah places in the hearts of those He loves. It helps you navigate the world without losing yourself in it. It teaches you to walk among people while keeping your heart anchored to Him. There's a deep beauty in this transformation. You start cherishing simplicity over extravagance, authenticity over approval, and sincerity over popularity. You realize that you don't need to be seen by everyone, you only need to be seen by Allah. Your satisfaction shifts from people's validation to Allah's pleasure. And in that shift, you find the calm your heart has been craving all along. You learn that peace doesn't come from having more company. It comes from having the right company, the kind that reminds you of your Creator. This new awareness might make your circle smaller, but it will make your heart stronger. You will find yourself surrounded not by many voices, but by meaningful ones, those who bring light into your life, who encourage goodness, and who share your values. And when no one is around, you will find comfort in the fact that Allah is always near, listening, guiding, and watching over you. The need for constant social interaction will fade because your soul has discovered the sweetness of divine connection. This is what spiritual maturity truly looks like: a quiet heart that seeks peace over attention, purpose over distraction, and sincerity over approval. It's not about withdrawing from the world, but about engaging with it consciously, protecting what is pure within you, and recognizing that peace is too precious to be shared with everyone. When Allah refines your heart in this way, He is teaching you that sometimes less is more, fewer people, fewer distractions, fewer attachments, and in that simplicity lies your greatest peace. Peace is one of the most precious gifts Allah grants to a believer, and with time you begin to realize that true peace is far more valuable than being liked, accepted, or popular. Many people chase approval and attention, thinking it will bring them happiness. But the heart only finds rest in remembering Allah. The more you try to please the world, the more restless you become, because the world is never satisfied. But when you seek peace through Allah, you stop chasing the noise outside and begin nurturing the calm within. As you grow in faith, you start to notice how fragile your peace can be when surrounded by negativity or distraction. The laughter in gatherings no longer feels genuine, the conversations feel empty, and the attention of people feels hollow. This realization doesn't mean you've become distant or unfriendly. It means you've learned to value something far deeper. You no longer want to trade your inner peace for temporary entertainment. You begin to see that not every crowd is worth joining, and not every friendship brings comfort to the soul. When your heart finds comfort in prayer, in silence, and in moments of reflection, you begin to understand what it truly means to be at peace. It's not about how many people know your name, or how often you are invited out. It's about how settled you feel inside, how light your heart becomes when you remember Allah, and how easily you can sleep knowing you've harmed no one and sought goodness in every action. Peace is not a luxury. It's a necessity for the believer, and Allah grants it to those who strive to keep their hearts clean. There are times when peace requires sacrifice. You may need to step away from gatherings where gossip and backbiting are common. You may need to stay silent when others argue pointlessly. You may have to choose not to respond to provocation, even when you're right, because your peace is more valuable than winning an argument. This restraint doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. It shows that you understand your soul's worth and that you refuse to trade your serenity for temporary satisfaction. The world glorifies busyness and noise, but the believer learns to glorify peace and stillness. You start to see the beauty in calm mornings, in quiet dars, in slow reflection. You stop needing constant stimulation because your heart has discovered where real contentment lies. The satisfaction that once came from approval now comes from knowing that Allah is pleased with you. The comfort that once came from being surrounded by people now comes from being surrounded by His mercy. When you reach this level of peace, you begin to protect it carefully. You think twice before letting people into your life, not out of pride, but out of wisdom. You've learned that not every person brings calm, some bring storms. You've realized that some friendships are seasonal, meant to teach you lessons, not to accompany you forever. You've understood that peace cannot coexist with constant chaos, and that protecting your heart is not selfish. It's obedience to Allah's command to keep your soul pure. Peace also changes how you respond to the world. You stop rushing, you stop reacting impulsively, and you stop taking every insult personally. You understand that what is written for you will come, and what isn't will pass you by, no matter how hard you chase it. That understanding brings calmness, because you trust that Allah's plan is better than your own. The things that once irritated you now teach you patience. The people who once disturbed you now teach you detachment. Every test becomes an opportunity to preserve your peace and strengthen your faith. The more you value peace, the more you distance yourself from anything that disturbs it. You become careful about what you watch, what you listen to, and what you speak. You begin to see how every choice affects the state of your heart. The Quran becomes your companion, Hikr becomes your refuge, and Salah becomes your escape from the world's chaos. In these moments of spiritual clarity, you understand that peace isn't found in a lifestyle, it's found in submission. There will be days when people misunderstand your silence or call you distant, but those who truly know you will recognize that your silence is not emptiness, it's contentment. You've learned that you don't need to attend every argument or prove yourself to anyone. Your calmness becomes your strength, your patience your weapon, and your peace your protection. When the heart is content with Allah, the noise of the world fades into the background. Choosing peace over popularity is not about being better than others, it's about being better than you used to be. It's about understanding that peace cannot coexist with constant approval, seeking. The heart that chases people will always be restless, but the heart that seeks Allah will always be serene. The moment you stop trying to please everyone and start focusing on pleasing the one who created you, you find a tranquility that no crowd can give and no loss can take away. Peace is a treasure that the heart begins to crave when it grows tired of noise, conflict, and worldly expectations. There comes a stage when a person realizes that being liked or being seen is not nearly as fulfilling as being at peace. You start to notice that no matter how much attention or recognition you get, there is still a void inside if your soul is disconnected from Allah. You realize that the heart was never designed to find contentment in people. It was designed to find peace in remembrance. The more you remember Allah, the quieter your heart becomes, and the less interest you have in chasing worldly approval. There is a moment when popularity stops impressing you and peace becomes your greatest goal. You might have once enjoyed being surrounded by people, being involved in every discussion, and being part of every plan. But now you value stillness. You prefer conversations that heal, not those that hurt. You choose company that reminds you of your purpose, not people who pull you away from it. This shift doesn't mean you've become antisocial or detached from life. It simply means you've matured spiritually. You've learned that being at peace with Allah is worth more than being liked by the world. The more you protect your peace, the more you begin to notice what disturbs it. You start realizing that not all laughter is sincere, not all gatherings are beneficial, and not all advice is genuine. Some environments might feel lively but leave your heart heavy. Some friendships might seem supportive but drain your energy and distract you from Allah. That awareness is not judgmental, it's clarity. Allah opens your eyes to what your heart couldn't see before. He allows you to step back, not to lose people, but to find yourself in His remembrance. When peace becomes your focus, you naturally start filtering what enters your life. You think before you speak, pause before you react, and reflect before you decide. You stop explaining yourself to everyone because you know that the one who understands your silence doesn't need your words. You stop arguing to prove your worth because your worth is defined by your Creator, not by the opinions of people. You stop chasing every opportunity, realizing that what is meant for you will never pass you by. In this calmness, you feel lighter, clearer, more in control of your emotions. This journey toward peace also requires sacrifice. You will lose people who thrive on chaos, who cannot understand your stillness, who mistake your silence for weakness. You may have to walk away from conversations that used to excite you, simply because your soul no longer feels comfortable there. It's not arrogance, it's self-awareness. You begin to understand that you can't absorb every emotion, fix every problem, or please every person. Your responsibility is to protect your heart, and that protection begins with guarding your peace. You learn that peace is not passive, it's a form of strength. It takes strength to stay calm when provoked, to remain kind when mistreated, and to walk away when disrespected. It takes discipline to choose silence over unnecessary arguments and patience over instant reaction. This restraint is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the strength that comes from trusting Allah's justice and relying on His timing. When you learn to hand your worries to Him instead of carrying them alone, your heart begins to experience peace that no human can provide. Peace also teaches you humility. It reminds you that you don't need to prove yourself, that you don't have to win every debate, and that you don't have to explain your worth to those who can't see it. You start understanding that Allah knows your intentions, hears your thoughts, and sees your efforts. That realization alone brings a calm that cannot be found in validation or applause. You stop seeking comfort in people's approval and start finding it in Allah's mercy. And in that moment, your heart begins to heal from the constant noise of expectation. You begin to appreciate the simple moments, the quiet after prayer, the beauty of dawn, the calmness of reflection. You realize that these small, peaceful pauses are the real blessings that often go unnoticed. While others may chase excitement, you chase tranquility. While others may look for distractions, you look for clarity. You understand that every moment spent in peace is a moment spent closer to Allah, because peace is the natural state of a heart that remembers its Creator. You stop comparing your journey to others. You no longer envy those who seem to have more, because you've learned that peace cannot be measured by possessions or status. You've seen people who have everything yet live in turmoil, and others who have very little but sleep with content hearts. You realize that true success is not in how much you gain, but in how peaceful you remain. The world can be loud, but your heart can be silent. The world can be restless, but your soul can be still, and that stillness is the greatest sign of faith. With every stage of life, you see how peace and faith are deeply connected. The more you trust Allah, the calmer you become. The more you accept His will, the more stable your emotions grow. The more you let go of control, the lighter your burdens feel. This peace doesn't come from escaping life, but from facing it with tawakkul, complete reliance on Allah. You learn to see beyond the chaos, beyond the people, beyond the temporary moments, and your heart starts to live in a place of quiet certainty. When Allah prepares someone for something greater, He often removes the noise around them so they can hear the truth more clearly. There comes a moment when the constant chatter, opinions, and distractions of the world begin to lose their hold on you. You start craving stillness not because you dislike people, but because your soul longs to breathe. You find that your heart feels heavy after certain conversations or gatherings, and without realizing it, you begin stepping back. This withdrawal isn't rejection, it's purification. It's Allah creating a sacred space around you, so He can prepare you for what lies ahead. Before every transformation, there is a period of silence. Just as the Prophet letter if they spent time in the cave of Hira before revelation, there are times when you, too, are pulled away from the crowd. You may not understand it at first, you might even feel lonely or confused, but that solitude is where reflection begins, where you learn to listen, not to the world, but to your soul. In silence, you can hear what truly matters. It's in those quiet moments that you begin to see your own heart clearly and recognize what Allah has been trying to show you all along. In this stage of preparation, Allah strips away distractions gently. He removes unnecessary attachments, and sometimes that means people too. It can be painful when certain relationships fade or when your interests change, but every loss has a purpose. Sometimes Allah takes away what you love to give you what you need. He allows people to leave so that you can depend on Him completely. The things that once felt essential begin to feel optional, and what once felt optional, prayer, reflection, sincerity, becomes essential. This is not regression, it's realignment. During these moments, the world might misjudge you. People may say you've changed, that you've become distant or quiet, but what they don't see is the transformation taking place within you. Your silence is not emptiness, it's focus. Your distance is not pride, it's preservation. Allah is teaching you to find strength in solitude, to rebuild your heart away from distractions, and to rise again with more clarity and purpose than before. Those who misunderstand your silence are not meant to hear what Allah is teaching you in it. You begin to understand that stillness is not a pause, it's preparation. You start reflecting on your life, your goals, your intentions, and your connection with Allah. You begin to ask yourself deep questions. Am I living for the world or for the hereafter? Am I pleasing people or pleasing my Lord? These quiet reflections bring answers that you would never find in noise. You realize that many of the things that once kept you busy were simply distractions dressed as priorities. The more you detach from them, the more peace fills your heart. In this silence, Allah nurtures your heart. He heals the wounds that people couldn't see and strengthens the parts of you that were weakened by worldly pressure. Every quiet moment becomes a classroom, every test a lesson, every pause a reset. You start to find meaning in things that once seemed meaningless. Even your tears in solitude become acts of worship, because they are seen and heard by the one who knows the depth of your heart better than anyone else ever could. This stage is not loneliness, it's divine companionship. As your heart softens and your perspective deepens, you start seeing life differently. You realize that not every opportunity is meant for you, not every path leads to peace, and not every voice deserves your attention. You start choosing wisely where to go, what to say, who to trust. This newfound awareness doesn't come overnight. It's a process that unfolds as Allah shapes your soul for what He has written next. You begin to walk through life slower but surer, calmer but stronger. You no longer rush into every opportunity. Instead, you move with purpose, guided by trust in Allah's timing. There's a special kind of peace that comes when you stop chasing what was never meant for you. When you realize that Allah's delays are not denials, you stop fighting the silence. You start appreciating the waiting period because you understand that every pause in your life has purpose. You stop asking, why me, and start saying, guide me. You start seeing the wisdom in things that once confused you. The silence that once made you restless now feels like home. It's no longer a place of uncertainty, but a sanctuary of peace and clarity. Those who are closest to Allah often experience these moments of withdrawal. It's not punishment, it's training. Allah prepares His servants in hidden ways. The lessons you learn in silence cannot be learned in a crowd. They require stillness, humility, and surrender. You begin to see how every quiet season of your life has shaped you, how every pause strengthened your faith, how every moment of solitude taught you resilience, and how every unanswered prayer was actually an answered lesson. Eventually, you reach a point where you no longer fear being alone, because you've learned that solitude with Allah is better than company without Him. The same silence that once felt uncomfortable becomes your safest space. You start carrying peace wherever you go because it no longer depends on who is around you, but on who is within you. Every breath, every moment, every calm pause becomes a reminder that Allah is near, that He is guiding, preparing, and protecting you in ways far greater than you could ever imagine. Sometimes peace demands that you build boundaries, not walls of arrogance, but walls of protection, gentle yet firm. You start to realize that not everyone deserves full access to your heart. Not every conversation deserves your energy, and not every relationship deserves your time. It's not because you think you're better than others. It's because you've learned that your peace is sacred. You cannot pour from an empty heart, and you cannot grow in a garden where negativity keeps trampling the soil. So you begin to say no, not out of anger, but out of awareness. Boundaries are not about cutting people off. They are about creating space for the right things to grow. When you stop entertaining drama, gossip, or negativity, you make room for tranquility, clarity, and purpose. You realize that your environment shapes your thoughts, and that peace cannot flourish where chaos is constantly invited. You begin to choose silence over arguments, patience over reaction, and distance over discomfort. These small decisions, repeated daily, build a quiet strength inside you that nothing external can shake. At first, setting boundaries feels uncomfortable. You might feel guilty for saying no, or selfish for choosing quietness over company. But slowly, you begin to see the wisdom in it. You start feeling lighter, calmer, more focused. You realize that every unnecessary yes was actually draining your energy, while every mindful no was restoring it. You understand that you are not responsible for keeping everyone happy. Your duty is to keep your heart sincere and connected to Allah. Protecting your peace becomes an act of faith, not isolation. People who were used to your constant presence might not understand this new version of you. They might question why you've become more reserved or less available. But the truth is, you're no longer seeking comfort in noise. You're protecting the calm that Allah has placed in your heart. You no longer feel the urge to explain yourself to everyone because your intentions are between you and your Creator. When you live with sincerity, you stop fearing misunderstanding. You stop chasing validation. You start valuing inner alignment more than outer approval. Boundaries also teach you mercy with yourself and with others. You start realizing that not everyone is meant to walk your path, and that's okay. Some people come into your life as lessons, not as lifelong companions. You stop trying to force connections that drain you. You learn to appreciate people for who they are, without expecting them to fill spaces that only Allah can fill. This acceptance brings a deep calm, the kind that comes from understanding that peace does not require perfect relationships, only honest ones. When you build healthy boundaries, you give yourself permission to heal. You no longer feel obligated to revisit old wounds or to explain your growth to those who refuse to see it. You allow space for reflection, for self-improvement, and for sincere dua. You begin to replace overthinking with trust and overreacting with patience. You understand that not every conflict deserves your response, and not every provocation deserves your attention. The heart that trusts Allah doesn't need to fight every battle. It chooses peace as its weapon. Boundaries reshape how you experience love and compassion. You start loving from a place of balance, not attachment. You give without losing yourself, and you care without compromising your peace. You realize that true love for people, for life, for yourself, must exist within limits defined by faith. You begin to prioritize what Allah loves, and as you do, your relationships become more meaningful. The more you respect your peace, the more you attract people who respect it too. This practice also reveals who truly belongs in your life. When you stop overextending yourself, only those with pure intentions remain. Those who value your presence will respect your silence. Those who care about your heart will not demand what drains it. It becomes clear who wants your company and who wants your energy. This clarity, though sometimes painful, becomes liberating. You no longer fear losing people because you know Allah never removes someone without reason. Every departure makes room for something better, peace, growth, or new beginnings. Through these boundaries, you begin to live with more intention. You no longer do things out of obligation, but out of sincerity. You no longer say yes to avoid discomfort, but to align with your values. You stop confusing availability with kindness and start realizing that the most compassionate thing you can do for yourself and others is to live truthfully. When you live like this, you no longer seek to control outcomes, you simply maintain your peace and trust Allah to handle the rest. And with every step, you find that peace isn't something you find once and keep forever. It's something you guard daily. You protect it through prayer, through mindful choices, and through distance from anything that threatens it. You understand that silence can be stronger than words, distance can be deeper than closeness, and peace is worth every boundary you have to build. The heart that is guarded for Allah's sake becomes a home for tranquility, and every act of protection becomes an act of devotion. When your heart begins to settle in faith, you start realizing that peace is not something the world can give you. It is something Allah places within you. The closer you draw to Him, the less the world's noise affects you. You begin to see how everything that once disturbed you loses its power when your trust is in Allah. You understand that peace doesn't mean a life without problems. It means having calmness even in the middle of them. It's the quiet certainty that Allah is in control, that nothing escapes His wisdom, and that every event unfolds according to His perfect plan. You start noticing how easily your peace is shaken when your attachment to the world deepens. The more you chase material comfort, the more restless you feel. But the moment you redirect your heart toward Allah, your entire being begins to soften. The same situations that used to make you anxious now remind you to pray. The same disappointments that used to hurt now push you closer to Him. This shift in perspective changes everything, because when Allah becomes your anchor, no wave can drown you. There's a special kind of calm that settles in your heart when you begin to rely fully on Allah. You stop forcing outcomes, stop chasing people, and stop worrying about what's out of your control. You realize that your job is to strive sincerely, not to dictate results. You begin to see that success is not about what you accumulate, but about how much peace remains in your heart after every test. Even in hardship, you find reassurance in knowing that Allah never burdens a soul beyond its capacity. Every pain becomes a reminder, every delay a mercy, every unanswered prayer a redirection. You learn that peace doesn't come from everything going your way, but from trusting Allah even when nothing seems to. The believer's strength is not in avoiding pain, but in facing it with patience. When your plans fall apart, you remind yourself that Allah's plans are better. When something is taken away, you remind yourself that He gives only what is good. This understanding transforms your struggles into opportunities for growth. You no longer view challenges as punishments, but as pathways that lead you closer to your Creator. As your faith deepens, your priorities begin to change. You no longer seek happiness in approval, possessions, or praise. You begin to value peace more than success, contentment more than recognition, sincerity more than visibility. You stop comparing your journey to others, because you understand that everyone walks a different path toward Allah. This realization brings an incredible calm, the kind that frees you from jealousy, competition, and resentment. You start seeing the world not as a race, but as a test of patience and gratitude. When you choose Allah above everything else, you also begin to notice how much lighter life feels. The things that used to trouble you no longer carry the same weight. You become less reactive and more reflective. Instead of complaining, you start seeking wisdom in every situation. Instead of blaming others, you look inward and ask what Allah is trying to teach you. Every difficulty becomes a lesson in humility, every blessing a reason for gratitude. You realize that peace is not found in control, but in surrender. You also begin to notice how much your peace depends on your connection with the Quran and prayer. When you neglect them, your heart feels unsettled. But when you return to them, even briefly, your heart begins to heal. The words of Allah become a source of calm, as if they speak directly to your fears and doubts. You start to see how each prayer realigns your heart, how each verse reminds you of who truly provides peace. You realize that prayer is not just a ritual, it's a meeting between your heart and its Creator, and in that meeting lies the serenity the world can never give. As your relationship with Allah strengthens, you also begin to see the world with softer eyes. You forgive more easily, you argue less, and you stop taking things personally. You realize that people's behavior often reflects their own pain, not your worth. You learn to respond with patience rather than reaction, compassion rather than anger. This gentleness doesn't make you weak, it makes you free. Because when your heart is content with Allah, you no longer depend on others to make you feel whole. This peace also changes the way you handle uncertainty. You no longer fear the unknown because you trust the one who knows everything. You stop asking why and start saying Alhamdulillah. You accept that what is written for you will reach you, and what isn't meant for you will never harm you. This acceptance brings a deep sense of calm, a peace that doesn't break with loss, that doesn't fade with difficulty. It's a peace rooted in the understanding that everything happens for a reason, and that reason is always for your good, even if you don't see it yet. When you finally reach that point where your heart prefers closeness to Allah over the noise of the world, you begin to live differently. You no longer rush, no longer worry about what others think, no longer seek what is fleeting. You learn to be present in prayer, in gratitude, in patience. Every breath becomes a reminder of Allah's mercy, every heartbeat a testimony to His care. You realize that peace is not something you search for outside yourself. It's something that grows within you when your heart rests with its Creator.